Welcome to the Kuhner Report. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. It's now 6:05 here on AM 680 WRKO and on 93.7 HD2. Good morning, Boston. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Kuhner man managed to get a little bit of rest. Actually took a very nice nap yesterday. So I'm feeling refreshed, recharged, ready to go. Plus, Grace and the kids are making their way back from Montreal today. In fact, they're going to be leaving in about 3 hours. So hopefully I'll see them in time for dinner. So I'm in a good mood today. My wife's coming back. My kids are coming back. I miss them. 617-266-6868 is the number. You can text us at 680-680. A lot to cover. A lot of news over the weekend. But clearly, the lead. Justice for convicted, the dear leader wants justice for a convicted murderer and rapist. But when it comes to Benghazi, what's Benghazi? So check out this story. This has been burning red hot for the left, in the left-wing media now for about a good 4 or 5 days. It began Tuesday, and it has been building and building like a crescendo. The Huffington Post, the Daily Kos, the New York Times, USA Today, the Washington Post, NPR, and of course now it's gotten all the way to the top at the White House. On Tuesday, Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, administered an execution. And by all accounts, they botched it. They injected a lethal cocktail, a lethal injection, a drug cocktail, poisons, essentially a combination of poisons, into the veins of Clayton Lockett. And Clayton Lockett was on death row. They injected him with a lethal combination of drugs and poisons. Instead of killing him instantaneously, for 43 minutes, he was convulsing. He became unconscious very quickly. Apparently, they say he was in agony. And finally, after 43 minutes, he then died of a heart attack. So, in a sense, the execution was successful. Clayton Lockett, the convicted murderer and rapist, died. The problem is it should have been very quick, very efficient, almost instantaneous. Instead, it lasted for 43 minutes. News of this spread like wildfire among liberal left-wing bloggers and in the left-wing media. The Huffington Post was outraged. The Nation magazine, outraged. The New York Times, outraged. MS Left BC, outraged. Every host has been going on this issue day after day after day. Finally, at the United Nations, human rights activists, and I put that in quotation marks, quote unquote, were now decrying what took place in Oklahoma as cruel and inhuman punishment, as basically a form of torture. Clayton Lockett, according to the left, was tortured. And so on Friday, in a press conference, a joint press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and I want you to think about this, one of our key, maybe most important allies in Europe, along with Britain, is furious and livid over all of the documented instances of and National Security Agency, NSA spying on her personal phone, on the phones of countless German diplomats and members of their cabinet, with the German public enraged and inflamed. The dear leader, instead of patching things up with the Germans, instead of worrying about our fracturing alliances around the world, deals with the issue of this supposed botched execution and Clayton Lockett. And so he then tells the assembled press corps that he has now ordered Attorney General Eric Holder to now do a thorough review of capital punishment in the United States, the death penalty, and in particular, he wants to investigate the botched execution of Clayton Lockett, because he believes that the execution amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. He now wants justice, I swear to you, for Clayton Lockett. Notice, when it comes for Benghazi, 4 innocent, law-abiding Americans. Benghazi? What's Benghazi? What's Benghazi? There's no scandal there. No one gets held accountable. There's no thorough review. There's no justice. He doesn't send Eric Holder to find out who was the one that was giving all this phony information and all of these phony talking points. But when it comes to a convicted murderer and a rapist, all of a sudden, we need a thorough review. In fact, don't even take my word for it. Here is the dear leader in his own words, with Angela Merkel standing right beside him, being asked about Clayton Lockett. He's outraged. Roll it, Brittany.
What happened in Oklahoma is deeply troubling. The individual who was subject to the death penalty had committed heinous crimes, terrible crimes. And I've said in the past that there are certain circumstances in which a crime is so terrible that the application of the death penalty may be appropriate. Mass killings, the killings of children. But I've also said that in the application of the death penalty in this country, we have seen significant problems. Racial bias, an uneven application of the death penalty. Situations in which there were individuals on death row who later on were discovered to have been innocent because of exculpatory evidence. And all these, I think, do raise significant questions about how the death penalty is being applied. And this situation in Oklahoma, I think, just highlights some of the significant problems there. So I'll be discussing with Eric Holder and others, to get me an analysis of what steps have been taken, not just in this particular instance, but more broadly in this area. I think we do have to, as a society, ask ourselves some difficult and profound questions.
Tough questions
around these issues.
Tough questions. We have to know now we have to look into our collective consciousness now. And is it disproportionately impacting African Americans? Is it the racism involved? Are we just sending people to their deaths needlessly? We got to look into this. Now, let me tell you who Clayton Lockett is. And if I use the word scumbag, I'm being too generous. Honestly, I'm being too easy on the guy. This guy was scum of the earth. He had already been convicted 4 times before his conviction in 2000. And here is what happened. In 1999, this was in Oklahoma, Perry, Oklahoma, Clayton Lockett, along with 2 accomplices, broke into a house. In that house was a 9-month-old baby. A man, fearing for that boy's life, tried to prevent the robbery from taking place because they were armed. He had no idea what they were. It was an armed burglary. If they were going to kidnap the boy, what they were going to do. So they began beating that man senseless in front of the 9-month-old baby. As the altercation took place, a 19-year-old teenager, a brave girl by the name of Stephanie Neiman, and her female friend, then came across Lockett and his 2 accomplices as they were beating this man in front of his 9-month-old son. Okay, this is basically now a robbery that's now escalating into an assault, which, get ready, then gets really ugly. So now Stephanie Neiman and her friend come to the house. The robbery's in progress. They hear what's going on. They're shocked. They can't believe it. Lockett and the two accomplices then grab the two women, beat them, tie them up, and they bind the two women with duct tape. Later, they take Stephanie Neiman's friend, and then they rape her. Right in front of Stephanie Neiman, right in front of everybody else. They begin to repeatedly rape the other woman. They then drag the four victims, the 9-month-old baby, the man that's been being beaten, Stephanie Neiman, and her poor friend who's now been raped. They then drive the baby into a remote area in rural Oklahoma. Lockett pulls out a sawn-off shotgun, puts it up to Stephanie Neiman, shoots her point blank. He then goes to the other three. Boom, boom, boom. Him and the other two accomplices, they're all still alive. They're bleeding. They're badly wounded. But according to his own confession, they were still alive. He then takes all four of them, tosses them into a pit, and they're buried alive. All of them dead. He confesses to it. The forensic evidence is overwhelming. Everybody cops to this thing. In 2000, he is then convicted of murder, rape, kidnapping, burglary, you name it. He is now sentenced to death. 14 years later, to me, what took so long? He then has his execution. Let me be very honest with all of you. What was so botched about this execution? I don't feel sorry for Clayton Lockett. As far as I'm concerned, he should have been writhing in pain for an hour, not 43 minutes. He got exactly what he deserved. And now you want to investigate what took place with the execution of this killer? Are you kidding me? My friends, look at how he cares about convicted murderers, but says nothing about Benghazi. Should the case be reviewed? I say it's ridiculous. What do you say, Boston? 617-266-6868, 618 on RKO. All of your calls. Next.
I had the shotgun in my hand, and I popped him in the head with the barrel. And he looked and seen the shotgun and calmed down. He said, just don't kill me. He said, you can do what you want to do. Just don't kill me and don't kill my son.
Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, 622 here on the great WRKO. That, of course, is the taped confession of Clayton Lockett, who was executed on Tuesday. However, the dear leader, I swear to you, is very upset because according to he and the American left, many American liberals are really angry. I swear, they're angry about this, saying that the execution was botched. And it took 43 minutes because of the drug cocktail, the lethal injection. And so there he was, writhing in pain and eventually dying of a heart attack. And they say this amounts to cruel and unusual punishment, essentially torture. You know, leave aside that he doesn't give a damn about the deaths of 4 people in Benghazi. He didn't even call that troubling. Okay, let that go. Just to show you the hypocrisy. How is this any of his business? This is an issue for Oklahoma. The death penalty is unique to, other states have it, but it was applied under Oklahoma law. Oklahoma administered it. It's a state issue. Eric Holder and him have nothing to do with this. It's completely none of his business. That's number one. Think about it. It's like with the Cambridge, his professor, Professor Gates. He's commenting on things and getting involved in things that are frankly none of his business, not part of his responsibility or his authority, and most importantly, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Were you there when the incident with the Cambridge cop and the professor took place? Do you know what happened? No. Were you there when the execution took place? No. 617-266-6868 is the number. This man will not mind his own business, but look how he defends illegal aliens, drug addicts, and convicted murderers. Especially like Clayton Lockett, which is so obvious when they're African American. And let me be clear about this. There's no issue of any guilt. This man is as guilty as sin. What about justice for the family? What about justice for the victims? When Stephanie Neiman lay in that grave, not for 43 minutes, but for hours, slowly dying to death. Suddenly now, it's torture. If this guy writhes in pain for 43 minutes, I swear to you, to me, I said, what's the problem with the execution? I would have made it an even 60 minutes, an even hour. Here is Clayton, and listen to how matter-of-factly, he's like a psychopath, a sociopath, just depicting how he killed him. Look how cold-blooded and ruthless he is. Roll it, Brittany.
I said, let's take them out in the country and leave them. And everybody said, no, we can't do that. We can't do that because we're still going to get caught. So I said, well, the only thing we can do is take them to the country and kill them.
Take them to the country and kill them. And if the execution doesn't go well, for the last 43 minutes, I'm going to have their leader. Their leader's going to be complaining on my behalf. Their leader. And, this to me is unbelievable. This is the man you're defending? Are you kidding me? And you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on the Kuhner Report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Jeff. Look, this should not surprise anyone. Nothing Obama does should surprise anyone. And I really think people need to go back if they don't have the memories of the New Left, of the Weathermen. The Weathermen considered convicted criminals to be class heroes. We have history in Boston of what happened to Officer Walter Schroeder as a result of a botched armed car robbery involving Weathermen and criminals. So many policies Obama puts forth are the policies of the Weathermen, and we need to learn more about this in order to effectively fight it. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Ann. Look, I'll tell you what they're saying in Perry, Oklahoma, where Stephanie Neiman is from. He got what he deserved. Here, straight from the New York Daily News. This is what Marilee Messias, a good friend of Stephanie's, what that guy got, he deserved. 43 minutes of pain? That's it? For all the pain you inflicted upon her and upon her family and upon all the victims? I swear, I'm reading the story and I said, well, okay, fine. He wasn't killed in a minute, he was killed in 43 minutes. Okay, what's the problem here? I'm happy. Honestly, I'm happy he suffered. We should have drug cocktails that make it go on 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. Let him think about it beforehand. Say, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be painless. You're going to hurt as you die. Eric, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Eric.
This hurts so bad. The victims, they get drip, 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 while this buffoon in the White House, like Deval Patrick, botched abortions, botched DCF. They are on the total wrong side. They don't care. They don't have a conscience. They're just as guilty as that person that evil that had done that to these innocent people. And those people that got killed by this monster, they have friends, relatives. They're still feeling the hurt. And here's Obama reopening this he doesn't even say anything about these people.
Let me ask all of you this out there, okay? Because this is the left's argument. That the point of execution is you want to do it cleanly, you want to do it quickly, you want to do it instantaneously and as painlessly as possible. For example, the guillotine believe it or not, when it was invented in France, it was seen as a humanitarian invention because, the blade comes down, it chops your head off, but you're dead instantaneously. Their argument is they are arguing that because it took so long for the drug to finally kill him, for him to be in such pain and agony for 43 minutes, that this is a form of torture. And that this is a form of state-sanctioned torture. That's their argument. To me, this is not torture at all. This is a convicted murderer and a rapist. And this is just, to me, just a smidgen, just a fraction of the justice that he deserves. Ask Stephanie Newman how much she suffered. Ask the 9-month-old boy who died, how much he suffered. 617-266-6868 is the number. Was the botched execution in Oklahoma a form of torture? The dear leader says yes, it needs to now be investigated. I say no. What do you say, Boston? 6:30 on RKO. All of your calls. Next.
I said, let's take them out of the country and leave them. And everybody said, no, we can't do that, because we're still going to get caught. So I said, well, the only thing we can do is take them to the country and kill them.
Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, 637 here on the great WRKO. 617-266-6868 is the number. You can text us at 680-680. The dear leader is now calling for an FBI Justice Department investigation. In fact, he wants Eric Holder, his top guy, the Attorney General, to investigate the supposed botched execution of convicted murderer and rapist Clayton Lockett in Oklahoma. 43 minutes is how long the execution took. The lethal injection did not kill him instantaneously. He finally died of a heart attack 43 minutes later. International human rights groups, the UN, are saying it's torture, cruel and unusual punishment. MSNBC says it was torture. New York Times says it was torture. Huffington Post says it was torture. Many liberals and left-wingers are saying it was torture. And so now the dear leader is conducting, or through Eric Holder, an investigation. My question to you is this. Number one, is this any of Obama's business? It's a state issue after all, numero uno. And number two, what if you were Stephanie Neiman's family, the 19-year-old that was beaten, shot, and then buried alive and eventually killed? That the president weighs in on this execution defending Clayton Lockett, asking for sympathy for Clayton Lockett. Would you be outraged? Would you be upset? Would you want the president pontificating and commenting if this was your daughter or your family member? 617-266-6868. Jim, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on WRKO, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Listen, this president, he's just staring up the racial pot. But what I wanted to say is, years ago, there were three young adults from Rhode Island that went to a concert, and one of the guy's dads took vacation time, went to Texas to protest a execution. Well, after the concert, one of the gentlemen had to leave because he had to work in the morning, so he left his best friend and his girlfriend at the concert together. They were carjacked, brought to Rhode Island to a dump, robbed, put on their hands and knees, and executed. Now, in turn, that father, who was just in Texas protesting a execution, now he decides he wants justice for his kid because he was, executed. He believes in the death penalty now.
So, well, Jim, Jim, I got to tell you, as I get older, I've always been a Catholic most of my life. I mean, I've always been a Catholic, but I mean a very devout Catholic most of my life. When I was younger, I was opposed to the death penalty. I believe in the culture of life. I believe every life is sacred. As I get older, and it's been about 10 years now, and almost with every passing day, every passing week, I become a bigger supporter of capital punishment. I think it's a deterrent. I think there's no question about it. Moreover, I think it's a form of justice. I believe you have forfeited your right to live on this earth if you take someone else's life, or if you rape them, or if you commit heinous crimes. I don't know what you want to call beating a man in front of his 9-year-old son as you burglarize and rob his place, and then 2 young women trying to be good Samaritans. You then kidnap them, tie them up, bind them with duct tape, rape Stephanie Neiman's friend in front of everybody repeatedly. Then you drag them out, all 4 of them, to the country, and in cold blood take out a sawn-off shotgun and shoot them one by one, and then throw them in a shallow grave. You bury them alive. That's the SS. That's the stormtroopers. Now, do people give a damn how some of the top members of the SS were hanged or killed after World War II? Who cares? So this guy suffered for 43 minutes? I swear to you, I don't call this a botched execution. I called it an improved execution. In fact, to me, I'm thinking, when I read this story, and what do you mean? They're protesting this? I swear, what I'm thinking is, hey, maybe they developed a nice drug cocktail that makes you die for 43 minutes. I'd be for it. In fact, I'd make it an even hour, 60 minutes. So Stephanie Neiman can sit there in anguish and agony and be tortured for hours, buried alive, bleeding to death. That 9-month-old boy, his father, the other girl who was raped repeatedly, they can suffer for hours and hours and hours. But suddenly, this guy, convicted, confessed, murderer and rapist, there's the dear leader. And notice how sick the American left is. Benghazi? Hey, what I would turn around and say to them is this: dude, this was like a week ago, dude. This was like 6 days ago. Dude, what are you getting all hot and bothered about, dude? Steve, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on WRKO. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Jeff.
Hey, Steve.
How you doing? Is the dear leader going to be calling Clayton's parents to express condolences? And is he going to call for a vigil for this scumbag? I mean, at what point does this guy realize, he's as them when he recognizes them as even human? I mean, the guy's an animal, and he hurt innocent people. And the president actually put in his mouth, just why? Because he's black?
Honestly, I mean, I hate to say that, but yes. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to racialize this, but it's so obvious. He's racializing it. He's the one that's turning this into a race issue. Notice, here, look, I have to call him out on it. Someone has to speak the truth. Ambassador Chris Stevens, white. Sean Smith, white. Ty Woods, white. Glenn Doherty, white. What's the big deal? What difference does it make now? But notice, whenever there's an African-American involved, Trayvon Martin, hey, he could have been my son. I could have been his father. He could have been my son. You weren't there. You don't even know what the hell happened. This doesn't even concern you. This is a local issue. But notice, suddenly, he's got to get involved. The Cambridge professor, Professor Gates, you weren't there. You don't even know what the hell happened. Gates got it right away, runs to a mic. Same thing now with Clayton Lockett. You weren't there. You have no idea what the hell happened. I bet this guy didn't even know the full extent of his monstrous crimes. I will bet you dollars to donuts. There he is right away in front of Angela Merkel. Now, I want you to think about this. Never mind just the racializing. I want you to think about this. There is a full-scale war going on now in Ukraine. I don't know if the world knows this. I don't know if the American people know this. Russian bombers, Russian jets are now flying over Crimea. There is literally now street fighting taking place in the city of Odessa in Ukraine proper. Dozens are now dead. we've committed to defend Japan's 3 islands. I swear to you that not one person lives on because it's claimed by China. We could be at war with China if we're not careful. You have this NSA spying scandal, which is destroying our alliances all over the world. The Germans are in an uproar. And in front of the German chancellor, you're talking to the American people about the botched, what, to me, again, it was an improved execution, but let that go. About the the supposed botched execution of a rapist, a murderer, a thug in Oklahoma, which is a state issue? Are you, seriously, are you kidding me? At one point, does somebody in the press corps just stand up and say, Mr. President, mind your own damn business? 617-266-6868 is the number. Lines are loaded. Robert, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on the Kuhner Report.
Jeff. Hey, there's so much good stuff here. First of all, listening to B.O. use the moral argument, that's ridiculous because he doesn't believe in anything. The normal suspects are always going to line up to pee on America, the communists in every country or any organization. So what I would do is this. I'd do a side-by-side. I'd put the guy on the table, and then I'd put a dummy to the right in 2 videos at the same time. One with the guy getting the injection, and the one to the right where the person gets beaten, blown away, and then buried, and see how long that takes. That's what you have to do. Compare and contrast. This guy doesn't care. It's a distraction. My question is, where are the private sector jobs, Jeff?
Oh, geez. Look, until this guy leaves the presidency, you're never going to see private sector jobs. We got another 2.5 years. Mike, before we start seeing any jobs, if we're lucky. Mike, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on RKO. Shoot.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Botched abortions, botched DCF. Anything that is good and right and justice.
Mike, first, like your phone, like it sounds like you're like you're being buried alive or something. Like you're calling me from some shallow grave. But he was saying botched abortions, botched DCF. Justina Pelletier, she's being tortured. Innocent victim being tortured. Where's the dear leader? Oh, I'm sorry. Could it be because she's white? I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that. Or it would embarrass Mini-Me. We can't do that now. Mike, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on RKO. Go ahead.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hey, Mike.
This is excellent. The contrast here to prove that Obama's just a liar, because if he really was concerned about suffering and little children being butchered right after they're born by this Kermit Gosnell. Most of them were black children. They suffered immensely. They were basically butchered alive. And the way the bodies were treated, no remorse at all by this guy. Not a peep from Obama about that. Oh no, he can't talk about that. It's just one vile criminal that gets executed.
There's no Eric Holder. Then there's no review. Because that would offend the abortion lobby, which is the base of the Democratic Party. But again, let that go. Jenny, you're up next. Go.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jenny.
As far as I'm concerned, yes, he should have been tortured. That's all there is to it. But by the same token, about Obama playing the race card all the time, what really irks me about that is the fact that he had a white mother and a black father. His black father took off and married another woman in Africa. His white grandparents raised him, worked hard to put him through college, and he doesn't even acknowledge his white grandparents or that he is part white. And he's constantly playing this black card, and it's driving me up the wall.
Jenny, it's even worse. When the Reverend Wright scandal really blew up, he threw his own white grandmother under the bus. I don't know if you remember this. He called her a racist. So, that's the kind of man we have in the White House. Never miss an opportunity to play the race card. even with convicted murderers and rapists. 617-266-6868 is the number. Was the execution of Clayton Lockett botched? I say no. What do you say, Boston? And should we be investigating? All of your calls next. Let's take it to Rush. Roll it, Brittany. Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, 6:58 here on the great WRKO. Russ, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Welcome.
First of all, Jeff, another example of liberalism is a mental disorder. You know, here we are Boston strong, and many are also execution weak. Killing a savage human, to me, is equivalent to killing a rabid animal that has caused the death of a human. You know, I'm tired of those who make a travesty out of the justice system, and they have more compassion for the murderer than they do for the victim.
I'm with you, Russ. I'm with you all the way, my friend. Chris, I got a minute. Go.
Hi, Jeff. I'm thinking that execution went exactly as it should have. I'm going to stir the pot a little bit and say God put his hand in that. And, you know, the old biblical story that justice is mine, saying the Lord.
Chris, I swear, I've been reading this story now for days, and I'm like, what was botched? To me, if anything, it could have gone on a little longer. Just maybe, 53 minutes, maybe 63 minutes. Make it an even 90 minutes. In other words, how long was Stephanie Neiman buried alive? How long was she in that shell? Oh, she was there 2.5 hours, 3 hours? Let him suffer for 3 hours. Even Steven. 617-266-6868 if you want to join the show. Coming up next, a Ground Zero Muslim museum. The same people behind the Ground Zero Mosque now want a Ground Zero Muslim museum. I've got that story next. Don't touch the dial. Let's take it to Angela in the newsroom. Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, Hour 2, 7:06 here on AM 680 WRKO and on 93.7 HD2, 617-266-6868. You can also text us 680-680. It just doesn't end. It just doesn't end. Have you noticed how relentless Muslim extremists are in the United States to assault our heritage, to assault the memory of those that died on September 11, 2001, and to slowly but surely establish the supremacy of Islam here in the United States and across the West? I don't know if many of you are aware of this, but we actually won a major victory over the Ground Zero Mosque. The Ground Zero Mosque is dead. Despite the efforts of Mayor Mikey Bloomberg, Little Mikey, of course, the Dear leaders supported the building of a big Ground Zero Mosque. It was supposed to be 16 stories high on hollowed ground right near the site of the World Trade Center, where 19 Muslim extremist hijackers, in the name of jihad, in the name of Islam, committed the bloodiest, biggest Islamist attack on any Western country. And so, despite the support of the mainstream liberal establishment media, despite the support of then the mayor of New York, despite the support of the Dear leader, with tens of thousands of people protesting, with intense public backlash, with people like you in Kuhner country, the Ground Zero Mosque is dead. It will not be built. But they're back. They're back. And so the same person behind the Ground Zero Mosque is now behind a new push, not to build a 16-story community center / mosque, but now he wants a 3-story museum, a Muslim museum, dedicated, as he put it, to quote, the glories of Islam, unquote. And the person who's behind this is the same person who was behind the Ground Zero Mosque. Sharif El Gamal. And so having lost on the Ground Zero Mosque, he's saying, ooh, let's cut it down from 16 stories to 3 stories. The mosque is very inflammatory, so let's cut out the mosque, let's cut out the community center, and let's just make it a museum. A nice little innocent museum, like what they have in Washington, D.C. and New York. It'll be sort of like a Smithsonian. A Smithsonian, but dedicated to Islam. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? When are these people going to learn? The answer is niet. Niet, niet, niet. No, 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 no. You're not going to get your museum. You're not going to get your mosque. You're not going to get your community center. I don't care if you make it 3 stories, 2 stories, 1 story, make it a little mini office. No. And I'll tell you why the answer is no. And you even know why the answer is no. You know it. You just don't want to admit it. That, for us here in the United States of America and decent, loving people all over the world, is sacred, hallowed ground. That is the site where 3,000 Americans, by the way, some of them Muslims, Jews, Christians, people of all faiths, but Americans primarily, were slaughtered and massacred in the bloodiest, most heinous terrorist attack committed by radical Islamists against any city or target in the Western world. And to actually propose a museum dedicated to Islam and the glories of Islam, my friends, what they're doing is obvious. This is part of the agenda of Islamist supremacy. They want to show fellow Muslims and even the infidels, non-Muslims in America and around the world, we can subjugate you even here. Nothing is sacred for us. We can now build a mosque. If we can't build a mosque, we're now going to build a museum. But right near the site, right there, where radical elements of our faith slaughtered 3,000 of your own, and you will let us do it because we will use your freedoms against you. To show to you that we are superior to you, to show to you that we can dominate you at any time that we want. That's what this is fundamentally all about. Notice, whenever you insult the Prophet Muhammad, they say, oh, you must be sensitive. You must not blaspheme. You must be sensitive to Muslim sensibilities. You must not offend Muslim sensibilities. Don't you care about American sensibilities? How come it's okay for you to offend American sensibilities, but somehow we can't offend Muslim sensibilities? You have no business building a museum there. And I'll tell you why you have no business building a museum there. Because that terrorist atrocity was committed by 19 devout, fanatical Muslims who committed those acts in the name of Islam, in the name of the Prophet Muhammad, in the name of Allah. That site shouldn't be a place for you to put up a mosque or a museum or a community center. That site should be your shame. That site should be a site of infamy for every decent, a humane Muslim around the world. That site should be a reminder of the radical elements within your own faith. And instead, you want to ram it down our throats? And instead, you want to mock us and humiliate us and taunt us? And what kind of a museum are we really going to have? Are we going to have an honest museum? Are you going to talk about the 1,400 years of the history within Islam? Of Sharia law? Of the enslavement of women? of the constant massacres against Christians and Jews, of the massive ethnic cleansing, of the constant jihadi wars, of one war of conquest after another? Are you going to talk about the Prophet Muhammad and his multiple wives? Are you going to talk about him having child brides as young as 12 years old? Are you going to talk about all of that? Or are you going to stand there and whitewash 1,400 years of history and tell us how this is a religion of peace, and have the museum be a shrine to somehow the Islamophobia and a violation of supposed civil rights of Muslims in the United States? What this is an attempt at another major propaganda victory for the forces of radical Islam to subdue the United States, to show the world and show Muslim fanatics all over that nothing is sacred. The West will not defend anything against the encroachments of Islamic fundamentalism. And then we get to the mother of all questions. The New York Times, as usual, did an absolute puff piece over the weekend on the building of this Muslim museum. They don't want to get into the money. Who's funding this? Who was funding the Ground Zero Mosque? I'll tell you who it was. It was the Saudis. So I want all of you to think about this, okay? The New York Times wouldn't answer these questions, even ponder these questions, even consider these questions. The man behind this supposed Muslim museum, Sharif El-Gamal, according now to multiple records, on the record, where's he getting the money? Because I'll tell you this, he's failed to pay rent multiple occasions. He's defaulted on not one, but 2 bank loans. He's a tax cheat. He owes thousands and thousands of dollars on several of his buildings. Notice, you're not seeing the IRS clamping down on him. Have you noticed? Are you seeing federal armed agents descend upon this man's house all of a sudden? He's got thousands of dollars in unpaid bills to the federal government, but that's okay for him. So, he's defaulting on loans. He can't pay his taxes. His rental properties were kicked out of Soho. How's he getting the money to buy the 2 buildings that flank the proposed Ground Zero site? Where do you get the money for this? And I'll tell you what the answer is. He's flowing in Saudi money. The Saudis are financing him to the hilt. And he's actually applied for a grant, a $5 million federal grant devoted in the 9/11 fund to help with the redevelopment of Lower Manhattan. He wants us, the taxpayers, to pay for his Muslim museum with help from the Saudis. My friends, this is an outrage. This is an insult. You want to talk about intolerance? This is profoundly intolerant to the memory of those that died on September 11, 2001, to the family members of the victims, to all of the troops that have been fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq to subdue and defeat the very radical Islamists who were behind those attacks. And now you want us to foot the bill so you can build a supposed Muslim museum on Ground Zero? So you can sell to us what a miraculous, incredible religion Islam is? No way. No way. And my friends, it's about time we as a nation rose up and said enough is enough. You are not going to use our freedoms against us. You're not going to use our generosity against us. So let me say it to you once and clear and for all. Radical Islam is not our problem. To every Muslim in this country and around the world, it is your problem. It is being done in your name. directly quoting passages from your holy book, the Quran. And it's been going on for 1,400 years. I have nothing to apologize to you for. I have nothing to stand there and say I need to be tolerant to you. In fact, you have to be tolerant of us. You're the ones with the explaining to do. You're the one with the shame on your heads. You have the moral responsibility to speak out against Islamic jihadism. You have the moral responsibility to speak out against the monstrosities and the atrocities being carried out in the name of your faith and your religion. There will be no Muslim museum. There will be no museum at Ground Zero devoted to Islam. And the reason is simple. You don't deserve it. You were responsible for the attacks on 9/11. And now the question I have for the Muslim community in America is this. Where is your allegiance? Once and for all. Let us settle this finally. Is it to America? Or is it to the Ummah, the Muslim global community? Because if it's to the Muslim global community, if you want to back this Muslim museum, my friends, there's only one answer for you. Take the door. America, love it or leave it. Hands off Ground Zero. No Muslim museum. Agree, disagree, Boston. 617-266-6868 is the number. Should there be a Muslim museum? The liberals want it. The Islamists want it. I say no. All of your calls next. Welcome back to the Kuhner Report, 724 here on the great WRKO. The Ground Zero Mosque is now dead. So the very same developer and people behind the Ground Zero Mosque now want essentially a Muslim museum. This won't be 16 stories, it'll be 3 stories, but essentially it'll be devoted to to examining Islam and to the glories of Islam. I say it is utterly inappropriate. I say it is an assault upon the American people. I say it is on sacred, hallowed ground. They have no business doing this. It is time that we say enough is enough. What do you say, Boston? 617-266-6868 is the number. This is from 617. Jeff, the building of a Muslim mosque or museum is the equivalent of them planting a flag in the ground of their greatest victory. Shame on the politicians and anyone who support this. Bingo, 617. This is from 508. Jeff. Hold on, boy, the thing just... Okay, yeah. Jeff, how about a KKK museum down there right next to Martin Luther King Jr.'s memorial in Atlanta? You think the libs would approve of that? Bingo. They wouldn't. They say this is inflammatory. This is going to cause massive tensions, racial tensions. It has no place there. They'd never get the permit to build their KKK memorial. Ever. But when it comes to radical Islam, look how the liberals and left-wingers bow. 617-266-6868 is the number. Do you support a Muslim museum? Tony, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on RKO. Welcome.
Jeff, I do support a Muslim museum, but I think we should do it. Let's make our own museum, quote the Quran, and show stonings and beheadings and how to beat your wife, and show them films of them killing homosexuals, and let's put that at Ground Zero to give the real picture.
Tony, I love that. You know what? I would co-opt them. I'd say, you know what? No. You want a Muslim museum? No problem. But we're going to show you the real side to your religion. Sharif, buddy, relax, go to Saudi Arabia, have yourself a coffee, have a little camel jerky. We're going to run this thing, and we're going to expose the truth about radical Islam. Ooh, suddenly I think that museum would just, it'd be verboten. It would be forbidden. Suddenly it would just go away. Suddenly they wouldn't want a museum. 617-266-6868. Eric, you're up next. Thanks for holding, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hey, Eric.
Hey, how's it going? Basically, I didn't think there was a problem putting a mosque in the area. The thing, I think you keep saying things like, that this is against us. Well, I mean, the us that were in those towers also included Muslims, and they were Muslim Americans. And you're also talking about the troops and stuff like that. There are Muslim American troops who are American citizens who have died for this country, to fight for this country, just as much as any of our other people. I mean, and you talk about the fact that there's, that the Muslim religion, has all these horrible things that have happened, but there's still things that are happening in the Christian religion out there that are just as bad and just as horrible.
Like what?
In other countries.
Like what?
Like what? Okay, like in Africa where they're burning witches, going to village to village and burning witches.
Christians in Africa are burning witches?
Look it up, Jeff. Look it up.
Cite me your source, because I don't believe you.
Okay, well, why don't you look it up? Because I'm in the car driving. I really.
So you made that up. Tell me where. Let me ask you this.
I'll post it, Jeff. I'll post it on your website.
Listen, look, Eric. Are you going to tell me with a straight face that the Catholic Church condones terrorist bombers or terrorists to blow themselves up and kill innocent women and children? Is this what you're telling me now? Is this how deluded you liberals have become?
No, are you telling me that American Muslims are condoning what's happening?
Some condemn it. Well, I'll tell you what the truth is, and you should know this. Some condemn it and some condone it. In fact, in Britain, there was a recent survey. Look this up. Times of London. 40% of Muslims in Britain supported the London 2 bombings. 40%. So, let me ask you this. Name me one Muslim majority country, one, whereby non-Muslims, Christians and Jews, are treated with any kind of basic tolerance or human rights, where women are not mistreated, and where homosexuals are not being stoned.
Jeff,
name me one.
Jeff, that's part of the problem with having any kind of theocracy, okay? I mean,
No. Hey, I can show you many Christian. America is a Christian country. We don't stone homosexuals. We don't murder women. Well, I'm sorry. The majority faith of, I know you don't want this.
But we're not a theocracy, Jeff, and you can't sit there and say we are. And that's what I'm saying is those other countries are theocracies.
No, they're not. Turkey is not a theocracy. Iraq is not a theocracy. They're technically secular states. Egypt is not a theocracy. No, I'm sorry. Wherever you have majority Muslims in one nation, what you have is massive ethnic cleansing, persecution of Christians and Jews, the enslavement of women, and the stoning of homosexuals. Now, my question to you is this. Was 9/11 committed in the name of Islam? Yes or no?
Yes, it was. It was committed against the fact that we had people in Saudi Arabia supposedly on hologram. We put troops over there, and that was part of the.
So that justifies. Hold on. So we have troops in Saudi Arabia asked by the Saudi government to protect them from Saddam Hussein. So we send troops. Hold on. We send troops. Eric, hold on 1 second. We send troops to Saudi Arabia at the request of the Saudi government. And because we have troops in Saudi Arabia, that justifies them killing 3,000 Americans? Is that what you're telling me?
I never said it justified. I thought it was the most horrible thing that ever happened in this country. But I'm not sitting there saying that's we have to condemn a whole religion because some idiots in the religion did something.
No, we have to condemn 10-15% of it that continue to commit terrorist atrocities. But look how you'd rather commit suicide and turn a blind eye than confront the real threat of radical Islam. Liberalism is a mental disorder. 617-266-6868 is the number. 731 on the Great RKO. More with your calls next. $7:37 here on the Great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. So, now there's a push for a Muslim museum at the site of Ground Zero. The mosque was defeated, and now they're redoubling their efforts. They want a 3-story Muslim museum. And they're asking, why are people so offended? Why would American people, why would us Americans be so upset by this? Because, Islam is just such a peaceful, it's just so peaceful. It's just so incredibly, you read the Quran, I'm telling you, I just read it and I go, stop it with all this peace. I can't take all this peace. It's too much peace. It's really, it's a very boring read. It's just forgiveness and love one another and love your neighbor. And it's like the New Testament. I mean, I listen to Muhammad and I listen to Jesus and I go, my God, it's the same thing. Here is what all 19 of the terrorists signed. This was their declaration. It was called the 9/11 Shura Council, along with, especially, it was the mastermind was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, but all of them signed this. This was their declaration announcing why they had committed the atrocities on September 11th, 2001. Quote, "Many thanks to God for his kind gesture in choosing us to perform the act of jihad for his cause and to defend Islam and Muslims." You see how peaceful they are? Look at the peace. "Therefore, killing you and fighting you, destroying you and terrorizing you, responding back to your attacks are all considered to be great legitimate duty in our religion. We ask to be near to God. We fight you and destroy you and terrorize you. The jihad in God's cause is a great duty in our religion." You know, these Irish nuns, whenever I go through South Boston, I see these Irish nuns, and they're always putting up these kind of similar proclamations. Just our duties to destroy you, terrorize you, kill you, fight you. It's the duty of our religion. It's our duty. Osama bin Laden, November 24th, 2002, justifying what they did on September 11th, 2001, wrote an open letter to the American people. Quote, "The first thing that we are calling you to is Islam. Convert or be slaughtered." This is now from Mohammed Atta, one of the people involved in the terrorist atrocities and in the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Quote, "When the confrontation begins, strike like champions who do not want to go back to this world. Shout Allahu Akbar, Allah is great, because this strikes fear in the hearts of the non-believers. God said," this is straight from the Quran, quote, "strike above the neck and strike at all of their extremities," unquote. "Know that the gardens of paradise are waiting for you in all their beauty, and the women of paradise," those are the virgins, "are waiting, calling out," quote, "come hither, friend of God," unquote. "They have dressed in their most beautiful clothing. The virgins are waiting for you in heaven." The quote, "strike above the neck and strike at all of their extremities," all of the non-Muslims, the non-believers. That's the Quran, chapter 47, verse 4. Quran, chapter 47, verse 4. By the way, I could do this all day. So when the libs who've never read the Quran, know nothing about Islam, say, "Oh, I can take a passage or two out of the Bible." Here, let me pull a Jim Browdy. I never read the Bible or the Quran, but if I was to take a passage or two out of the Bible, I could find some violence there. Christianity is just as dangerous as Islam. No. Christians do not commit jihad. Christians do not sanction the mass murder of women and children or of non-Christians. Yes, for example, in Rwanda, Christians slaughtered each other, but not in the name of religion. That was over an ethnic, the Hutus and the Tutsis. That was ethnic violence. Or what? Jeff? But what about the Crusades, Jeff? The Crusades, yes. And read Bernard Lewis, the foremost Arab Middle East scholar in the world. The Crusades was actually an attempt to recover Christian lands that had been conquered by Muslims. In Spain, in France, in Italy, in Croatia, in Serbia, in Romania, in Bulgaria, Jerusalem. It was not an offensive operation. It was a defensive effort, and a half-hearted one, and a half-successful one at that. Okay, well, Jeff, but what about Jeff? The sex abuse, Jeff. Pedophilia in the church, Jeff. It's the same as killing 3,000 innocent civilians. There are abuses in every institution, In fact, there is more sex abuse in the public school system than there was under the Catholic school system. Furthermore, sex abuse is rampant across the Muslim world. Here is the difference. It is not condoned in the Christian faith or Christian religion. In fact, it's considered a mortal sin. And that's why when the scandal was exposed, what happened? Did Catholics defend it? Did Catholics rationalize it? Did Catholics justify it? They excoriated it. They condemned it. How many Muslim leaders have you seen come out condemning radical Islam? How many? To the secular liberals. You phony, politically correct liberals. You hypocrites, you. You denounce Christianity, but you embrace Islam. You denounce religion, but you embrace Islam. You denounce the Tea Party, they're domestic terrorists. But radical Islamists, no, it's a failure of human understanding, according to Mini-Me. You phony, you. If we had people like you in the military guarding us, they'd slaughter every single one of us. 617-266-6868. Ronnie, you're up next. Thanks for holding, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. I had to call to respond to Eric's call. That story about Christians burning witches in Africa must have gotten buried under the 235 young girls that were dragged off by Muslim jihadists into the woods, never to be seen or heard from again. So, funny how the networks don't want to talk about that or cover that. And, you know, what drives me so crazy, Jeff, is the way liberals like Eric project all of Islam's sin onto Christianity. You know, it's Christians that treat women badly. It's Christians that treat gays badly. It's Christians that treat everyone badly. It's the Tea Party that are domestic terrorists and violence. And what drives me so crazy about listening to Eric is that, you know, I'm sure Eric fancies himself as a global citizen of the world who's tolerant and reasonable, but all he really is a big fat coward hiding under the guise of being reasonable, hiding under the guise of being tolerant. He's scared to death because these Muslims, this terrorism is working, Jeff. It's making people scared to death and rather place the blame on where it truly belongs. Christianity's the great evil of the world. And it's a bunch of crap and everybody knows it, Jeff.
Ronnie, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I gotta tell you, it's easy to pick on Christians because they know their actions belie everything. Their actions confirm everything. Look, you attack Jeff Kuhner. I follow the Prince of Peace. You can spit on me, and I will never do anything to you. I may disagree with you. I may rebut you vocally, vociferously. You go after that Muslim mosque, or that Muslim, that Ground Zero mosque, or that Muslim museum, you may get a fatwa. Notice Bill Maher, that biggest coward on the planet. Oh, he makes fun of the Pope. He makes fun of Sarah Palin. He makes fun of the Christian right. He makes fun of Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals. Yeah? Let him mock the Prophet Muhammad. Come on, Billy. Let's see what you're really made of, you little pathetic coward, you. Come on. Why don't you burn the Quran on your show? Come on. Why don't you stand there and say the Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile as you make fun of the Pope? Come on. I dare you, Billy. You know why he doesn't do it? Because he knows he's going to get a fatwa and off with his head. But to make fun of Pope Francis or Pope Benedict or evangelicals or whatever, oh, then he's a big man as he's snorting cocaine off the rear ends of prostitutes. You want to see how degenerate we become in this society? Look at Bill Maher. Bill Maher is the poster child of modern-day liberalism. Nothing in his head, polluted brain from drugs, and an utter coward. Oh, that's a right-wing extreme. Bill Maher is a serious thinker. It's right-wing extremism. Bruce, you're up next. Thanks for holding, and welcome.
Jeff, I say no way, Jose. These people killed two friends of mine. I almost got it going to a Yankees house, working for a television company. Who, by the way, I was also there at the 1-year anniversary. And I'll tell you right now, my thoughts don't change then. They're not going to change tomorrow. And anybody that wants to do something like that, hey, let's open a bar and call it something crazy, a coexist bar. So you can go in there and get throttled by axes and dragged down the street, lit on fire. These people are disgustingly just brutal.
Bruce, listen, look, honestly, I see it, especially here in Boston, in Massachusetts. I don't know what it is with these libs in the People's Republic of Massachusetts. They love that coexist bumper sticker. Whether I'm on the 95, the 93, the Pike, all I see are those stupid, forgive me, stupid coexist bumper stickers. Usually with a Dear Leader bumper sticker or an Elizabeth Warren or an Ed Markey. And I'm saying, do you guys get it? They slaughter moderate Muslims. Never mind Christians and Jews. Bruce, we set up a coexist bar. By the time the radical Islamists are done, everybody's been massacred in the bar. They make, I kid you not, they make that guy Lockett, that Oklahoma killer, that with the Bosch, they make him look like a choir boy. That's how vicious these people are. And what I find incredible, what I find absolutely incredible, is after the Boston Marathon terrorist bombings, when they said they did it in the name of Islam, where there was support for their cause in Chechnya, in Saudi Arabia, in Pakistan, in Iran, in the Palestinian territories, when they found out what happened, they were dancing in the streets, when to this day, go on all of these jihadi websites, which are trafficked by over 100 million people in the world. These libs keep acting like it's 5 people on the planet. It's 10-15%. Do the numbers. It's a religion of 1.5 billion people. You know what 10% is? 150 million. That's the size of Russia. And still, with their fellow citizens maimed, crippled, dead. Freedom of speech. I don't have a theocracy. First of all, stupid. If you knew anything about history, it's not religion that has killed people throughout the centuries. It's actually the state. It's actually fanatical ideologies, whether it be Nazism, communism, secularism, or radical Islam. Those have been the biggest killers in world history. Progressivism in its various forms, or radical Islam. But no. Notice, it's the Christians and Jews. Israel is the evil in the world. America is the evil in the world. Only the libs, well, it's like defending that Oklahoma killer. You're an American, massacred under Benghazi? But if you're a sick, twisted, rapist, murderer, we have to defend him. Same thing with Islam, same thing with the left, same thing with communism, same thing with Marxism or fascism. That's the left, my friends. Always defend the most vicious criminals and murderers in the world. Back to the Kuhner Report, 7:58. Joe, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're on RKO. Go ahead. Hello, Joe? Going once? Okay, we lost Joe. Charles, you're up next on RKO. Shoot.
There already is a museum there, Jeff. It is the empty space where the Twin Towers were. That is all the exhibit one needs to see. The whole world has become a Mohammedan museum. Here's a head. There's a charred body. Over there's a pool of blood. And then the curator says, over here's a blown-up building. The whole world has become a museum to Islam. Ground Zero has a museum. It's the empty space where the 2 towers were.
A very good point. Thank you for that call, Charles.
Yeah.
You want the mother of all museums? Look at Iran. Leo, you're up next. Thanks for holding. Go. Hey, Leo.
First time caller. This subject really hits a raw nerve with me. My next door neighbor, one of the nicest women that you'd ever want to meet in your life, along with her fiance, were on board Flight 11 that morning. And, she was about as close as you could get to an angel on earth. She was just the type of woman that would do anything for anybody. And I apologize for that incoming call, but there's no way way there should ever be any type of museum within a 5-mile radius at least of that site. And the governor of New York should nip any future calls in the bud now and just create some type of, I don't know how they would do it. They should just create some type of a circle, a 10-mile circle around Ground Zero that nothing will ever show any sign of the Muslim religion. And that, I don't mean to condemn the entire religion, but radical Muslims, we dropped the bomb in World War II to end it because Japan refused to give up. If they could ever circle an area where radicals were in one place at one time, then I would have no problem dropping the big one in the name of our neighbor because, again, I don't want to repeat myself. First-time caller, you can probably hear the nerve in my voice.
Well, you did great, Leo. You did great, and thank you so much for calling. Look, I'll tell you this right now. It was a different generation that won World War II. Then they weren't afraid to confront their enemies. They didn't care about people's sensibilities and sensitivities. They fought to win wars. Today, we wave white flags of surrender. Coming up next, we've got Holly Robichaud. There is a secret Democratic committee I want all of you to know about. And after that, explosive alleged racism on the radio, all of this, so much more. Don't touch that dial.